So admittedly, I have had very little experience with the Ratchet and Clank series. I know I played at least one of them on the PS2, but I can't for the life of me remember which one it was. And I didn't play any of them during the PS3 era, well, back when they were new games at least. But when the PS4 remake came out, I did check that one out, and I really enjoyed the experience. And I know that that opinion is a bit polarizing amongst fans of this franchise. But just being genuine here, I had a great time with it. And of course, I did play Rift Apart when the PS5 came out, and that game just blew my mind visually. It was just a ton of fun, and I just couldn't believe what they accomplished using the PS5's architecture. Today, we're checking out the PS3 equivalent of Rift Apart, meaning that Tools of Destruction here was a huge leap for the franchise, taking the series into new graphical territory, and similar to how Rift Apart looked like an animated film, many had thought the same when they saw Tools of Destruction running for the first time on their PlayStation 3s. Now, I played this game for the very first time just a bit ago, and I was a bit worried that going into this one, it was going to feel like too clunky. Like the gameplay advancements brought about by the newer games, the much more fast-paced and intense gunplay, the strafing of weapons coupled with, these enormous particle effects just flooding your screen. I was concerned that very little of that would have been around in this nearly 20-year-old entry at this point. But to my surprise, Ratchet & Clank Future here plays decently well. It's not a completely, timeless execution of its gameplay mechanics. It feels like a more streamlined PS2 game at times, but that's not to say that it's unplayable or too clunky by any means. Many of the same strategies you can use in the later Ratchet games are still present here, and you still have the banter of the characters, the explosive combat, the destructible objects on screen. All that is present. So today I'm going to discuss my experience playing the entirety of Ratchet & Clank Tools of Destruction for the very first time. So let's get into it. Now, Ratchet & Clank Future takes the franchise into a more bold and more cinematic direction. And as the name implies, you start off in this futuristic metropolis and essentially have all these tools and weapons to just cause mayhem with. And you immediately see the PS3 taking this franchise into, more animation film type territory with, quite frankly, just fun and beautifully directed cutscenes coupled with some really good animation work that still holds up despite not being quite as pixel perfect as the later entries. One thing that quite impressed me when I was playing this game was just the sheer scale of it. You have a ton of planets you get to visit in this one. There's old favorites, there's new locations brought about with this entry. And when I started playing the game, I actually felt a bit overwhelmed because you just have complete agency in terms of which planets you want to visit at which particular times. It's a bit nuts, but also this is quite evidently thanks to Blu-ray and the increased storage found on that disc type. This really allowed the developers to just pack in better quality cutscenes and just much more game on top of that. So as a debut title for the franchise on a new generation of hardware, I think it certainly paints a significant picture. And honestly, once I got into the game, I was finding myself just as engaged as the newer entries, only reminded of this title's age when gameplay and combat really came into play. Now, before we continue further, I do want to take a look at the Ratchet & Clank Future Tools of Destruction box art. Now, I normally have a distaste for greatest hits versions of games. I like to get the original launch versions. That's just me particularly. But one thing I have to say is that this must be a really early iteration of the PS3's greatest hits version. And I just, I wasn't able to find an original copy of this game when I was picking it up. So this is the only one available at my store. But it's nice because it doesn't actually have any of the red casing or the red badging. It's only on the front banner there and then the disc itself here. So that is pretty cool. But in any case, let's take a look at the actual manual itself. Just a textbook example of everything you want a manual to be in a video game. It's in full color. There are a ton of pages, and it just goes into detail about everything, controls, gameplay systems, a bit of backstory, all the information about the worlds in the games, the different characters, tool sets, devices, like all this cool stuff. I really, really love this manual and just the way that they put it together. It just looks absolutely gorgeous, and definitely with the PS3's clear cases, which were really, the first platform that was really doing this around this time. It really just brought home the conversation that you were buying a premium game here. And then the beautiful back cover art here, seeing, we got a beautiful view of Metropolis with Ratchet up there in the top right corner. So all that is pretty awesome. I just think that they put together this physical copy really, really well. So enjoyed taking a look at that for the PS3. Now, I briefly want to touch on the visuals here because honestly, there isn't really much that needs to be said. Tools of Destruction is a first-year title for the PlayStation 3, and like Rift Apart, I think it served the foundation for the graphical leaps that generation, and in particular that console, could provide, granted that you wrestled with the RSX chip correctly. The scale of these environments just wow you immediately, and in the beginning area, you can quite easily find yourself just getting lost in the vistas that are sort of all around you. But animation work deserves equal mention here. There's destructible objects, and while not quite on the same level as in the later entries, it's still enough to convey chaos and mayhem as you're tearing up these levels with your arsenal. Honestly, I thought the game looked quite good for what it was. There were certainly better looking games on the PS3, but as an initial launch year title, I just find it hard pressed to complain about much regarding this presentation. Oh, and did I mention it actually runs at 60 frames per second most of the time? Yeah, one of the main criticisms I had heard for the later entries was the reduction in fluidity in terms of combat, but Tools of Destruction here does manage to actually target 60 FPS, and yeah, there are some dips and some pretty obvious ones too, but it still makes for added enjoyment to the combat loop by having this extra fluidity. It's just nice that that was in no way lost when transitioning over to a new platform, a new console, because I mean, not even the PS4 remake of the first game had this at launch. It was a straight 30 FPS title, and while we did get this with Rift Apart, I still felt that the pristine visuals in that game's quality mode really made it the preferred choice for me, and it was only corrected later by the added RT FPS boost patch that kept the game's ray trace reflections and all that stuff. Now with the music and audio, it's basically quite as you'd expect. Insomniac is really consistent with creating a fun soundtrack with fun audios and cues for their franchises, and this game is just no exception. I think you can comfortably play this and then recognize the quality in every single aspect. Fun to note as well that Tools of Destruction makes full use of the PS3's advanced audio feature set and actually has the option to play this game in full uncompressed 7.1 surround sound, which back in 2007 I would venture was even more of a niche than it is today. This was something that was actually quite, present in a decent number of games up until the later half of that generation, where support kind of dwindled down. But it's still cool to see that that is part of the game here. The guns sound really good. The voice work is really fun, and every person plays their part to just perfection, and no one really stands out as just being off or just uncharismatic. I have to say, I really respect Insomniac for just continuing to invest in creating more games in this franchise, because it's just silly fun that, regardless of your age, anyone can pick up these games and just immediately enjoy them. Like, there's enough content in here where it'll basically last you throughout a free weekend, and also, for kids, there's enough in here to keep them invested for a very long time. And considering the pedigree of Sony's current IPs and really the lack of just fun or quirky type of games in their franchises, I mean, for the same reason, that's why games like Astrobot are really exciting, because it's just simple, energetic platforming goodness done through the lens of celebrating Sony's characters and IPs, regardless of critical acclaim. And then playing through this one, Tools of Destruction here, it just reminded me of Insomniac's continued excellent output of creating consistent quality titles in a quick pace, as well as the breadth of variety that Sony used to invest in their games and the creative teams behind them. I can only hope that we can find a way to return to this someday, just this allowance of letting people create these type of experiences that may not be huge system sellers or may not have the most significant budgets, but are just really fun, excellent games that just add variety and character to your portfolio and just help, they help identify a platform and really mold, you know, its vision and cement itself as a just a console or just a system that people want to be a part of. But in any case, you know, Tools of Destruction is a good time regardless. I did enjoy this one, and I'm looking forward to getting more involved in the earlier Ratchet and Clank games, which again, I know I played at least one of them on the PS2, but perhaps it'll come back to me when I get to replaying those titles, which one that was. In any case, thank you guys so much for watching. I hope everyone has a great day, and I'll catch you all in the next one.